First, let's see what we know about the client just based on what's in the recordings and not compare it to anyone else, so we can form an objective profile of Client 46. In their first tape, we get the therapist saying, quote, "You know, everyone associated with this company gets performance reviews, right? Which means that they're associated with a company, which most would assume to be Fazbear Entertainment. However, they're asked in another tape if, quote, "Do you know a place called Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex?" I'll take your silence as a yes. And besides, I know you know it because the technicians who work for Pizzaplex know you. Or rather, I guess it would be better to say they think they do. Which means that they wouldn't be dealing with Fazbear Entertainment. Otherwise, they would know about the Pizzaplex because they know the company, not because the technicians know them. We know that the fourth therapist characterizes them as a loner, and their second therapist considers them a hacker, mentioning their aptitude with technology. Client 46 also has a relatively normal family, but lies to the therapist about having a troubled past. They hacked some form of system and glitched out some of the animatronics, was caught on tape talking to what the therapist described as rabbit ears, and they remain unbothered when finding out two of their former therapists went missing and one was found dead, mangled in machinery, as if they're used to death and or already knew about the therapists. So those are all the things we know as fact for Client 46. However, there's also some stuff we can infer, but since it's me connecting the dots, there may be some accidental bias, so I'm keeping this separate from the rest of the facts. The client here does appear to be younger, given the tonal shift between the therapists between when they're talking to Vanessa and talking to Client 46, which could be the reason the tapes with Vanessa were included. Going back to the age issue, when being asked about encrypted communications which seem to be manipulative in nature, the therapist says, quote, "Well, the texts say it looked to them like it was an attempt to manipulate you, or maybe to lure you somewhere." This is the same language used when educating kids about predators and online safety. Hell, I'm pretty sure I feel like I've heard that exact line in grade school. So how can we know if this is specifically Gregory, you ask? Like, sure, it's a young boy, but how could we know if it's Gregory if we aren't actually given a name? There are a couple clues to indicate this. Firstly, he is associated with some company related to Fazbear Entertainment. We know it's probably not Fazbear Entertainment directly, but with the technicians sending over footage of one of your clients, you can guess that the companies are related. So it would most likely be a subsidiary of Fazbear Entertainment. Using the other discs as a time frame, we know that Vanessa has not yet been promoted to security guard, and that Lewis, the IT guy from FNAF AR, is currently working in marketing, not IT. So at least disc 1 takes place before FNAF AR, and seemingly by disc 5 they're in their spots that they were in during FNAF AR, with IT questioning Vanessa's search history. This leads me to the conclusion that the company they're associated with is the one controlling the distribution and creation of the animatronics in special delivery. But what companies have we seen that control renting out and creating animatronics? That's right, Afton Robotics. Present in sister location, and the reason there was no Funtime Chica in that game, but why there was one in Ultimate Custom Night. The company being named after, and originally run by the one who caused the company's rep to plummet in the first place, would also understandably have psyche valves for anyone associated with them, so it explains that as well. So, running with this idea that Afton Robotics is controlling the FNAF AR animatronics, how does Gregory fit into all of this? Well, for that, we need to work out who this potential bunny-eared person is. Some assume Glitch Trap, some think it's Vanny. It could also technically be Burn Trap. However, the therapist never really gives us a color of the ears, only the detail that they look like bunny ears. Burn Trap's ears are horrifically destroyed, so he's out. Glitch Trap is a computer code with no physical form, so that just leaves Vanny, which also discounts the theory that Client 46 is Vanny. This also makes sense with the timeline of the CDs, since Vanessa mentions making a bunny costume in disc 11, moves to a new location after disc 12, and the bunny ears are mentioned on disc 15. The disc after that is also the last one with Client 46, knowing that they aren't coming back. This to me suggests that Vanessa and Gregory moved around the same time, which would also explain why Gregory was being evaluated, since he was associated with the company through Vanessa, although that can't be confirmed. But there are also other odd details that I picked up on that I wanted to address, like how we never hear Client 46 talk, but they do end up responding, as we see in discs 6 and 8. They say something, but the recording doesn't pick it up, or their response is wiped out, much like how Gregory was wiped from the Pizzaplex's system. 46 also shows up to the Pizzaplex randomly, unannounced, despite not working there, and in the picture that showcased the bunny ears, we can also hear that the camera is distorted around them, but that the therapist still says that the blob, I guess, looks like Client 46. So why would the camera be distorted around us? Seems to me like it could be when you take a picture of a computer screen with your phone and you get those like lines going across the screen, or like how shapeshifters in Supernatural have the laser eyes when they're on camera. It seems like this person isn't entirely human, perhaps part robot. Robot speculation aside, I feel confident in the fact that Client 46 is Gregory. The only issue I have now is why was he hacking the animatronics? He definitely had a purpose, since to quote Disc 16, what I understand is that the glitch stopped being a glitch and turned into an intentional set of subroutines that were aimed at creating the same thing the glitch created. Those subroutines seem to have come from you. Can you explain that? And don't worry there, Doc, I think I can explain it. There is either a good or evil motive for this hack, and I don't really know which is more likely, but I have a feeling as to which ones. But let's look at both. The evil motive would be that Gregory is working with William and Vanessa, so he hacked the animatronics and made sure that the glitch he caused instilled itself into the robots so that his work wouldn't be undone, to perhaps distract them from what's going on underneath the Pizzaplex. Hence why he would be talking to Vanny all nonchalant, like seems to be the case in that photo I mentioned. The good intention, however, which is the one I think would push the story further ahead and is probably the more likely one, is that Gregory is indeed a crying child robot. He learned of his father's misdeeds and whatnot over the years, and before being transferred into the next aged up model, he ran away. Over the next 40 some odd years, he would learn about coding in order to hopefully be able to counter what his father had been doing. But once he heard of the FNAF 6 fire, he figured it was all over. Once Fazbear Entertainment came back with a VR game and a special delivery system for new animatronics though, he realized what he needed to do. So he got on Vanessa's good side through possible manipulation and looking like a 5-year-old to get close to the company. He lied about his family history to the therapist so that they would keep seeing him and he would have more time in the company building so that he could then hack the animatronics, causing them to malfunction in an effort to get the company or the project at least shut down. Hence why the glitch ended up being a closed loop where it kept replicating itself so it couldn't be deleted. But when the company didn't shut down and instead built a giant mall complex, Gregory went to investigate, hacking the cameras in an effort to conceal his identity, which resulted in him finding the Vanny mask and learning that Vanessa was under his father's control. Since the line about the bunny ears goes, quote, "You're talking to someone or something," it's hard to tell. But it also being a still shot, we don't know if he is really talking, or just shocked, or talking to himself about the situation. 46 talking to themselves had also been well established at this point. He could have also lost his memory when he climbed inside of Freddy, because he could have been inside Freddy when he was being repaired, and it could have just caused a whole lot of issues. This association with Vanessa and Vanny, however, is why he's willing to get ice cream with her after the Princess Quest ending. That's still the only way to explain it. Them knowing each other is the only reason he would get ice cream with a woman who just spent 6 hours trying to kill him. And it explains how he knows to complete the Princess Quest games in order to save her soul. And at 10, Princess Quest. This is a theory that I truly believe and that I'm pretty sure has been all but officially confirmed. Vanessa is certainly the princess that we play as in Princess Quest, since the game was used to lock her away in the first place, both in Help Wanted as well as in the first version of the game in Security Breach, which is just a recreation of the one that we play in the Help Wanted mobile port. To further solidify this connection, there are lore bags mentioning how Princess Quest is an arcade machine that for some reason was ported to that medium from mobile, and they couldn't figure figure out why. So this is clearly the game that we dealt with in Help Wanted, and since we play as Vanessa in Help Wanted, it only makes sense that Vanessa is once again the princess that we're playing as, who inevitably gets caught by Glitch Trap, and then we have to fight our way back into our body, as indicated by the sword we get in chapters 2 and 3. The biggest piece of evidence here is the final door. That is in essence an exact 16-bit replica of the door that we get shut behind in the true Help Wanted ending, which again, we do as Vanessa. So it's not Cassidy. Stop saying that. In at 9, relationship. Gregory, our player character in the game, is certainly a mysterious kid, and Vanessa, the night security guard who's also Vanny, is just as confusing. But at least we know more about her story, being our player from FNAF VR. But what the most mysterious thing about this game is the relationship between Gregory and Vanessa. Like, what the heck is up with these two? Vanessa spends the whole game trying to lock Gregory in the security room, and then Vanny comes to kill us, as she does in the worst ending. But then, after curing her, we don't even ask questions, we just go eat ice cream on a hill with her. So if we're so quick to do that, then there's no way she's a stranger. It genuinely seems like their family, which would explain why he knew something was off with her, but she can't be his mother or sibling because when she locks us in the security office, she tells us that we'll wait until your parents or the police arrive. If it was a sibling, she would have said our parents or even mom and dad, but with her saying your parents, that means that they aren't hers, making our options limited. And she's definitely not our mom, since if she was, she would have said your father, which is weird because she also seemingly doesn't know Gregory's name until it starts coming out of his Fazwatch, or at least that's how she says that she knows his name to Freddy in Parts and Service, but then she could have been lying. And at 8, aware. Now we may believe that Vanessa is unaware of her dual personality, that it would make sense if she blacks out while William takes over as Vanny, or however this weird pseudo-possession thing works. I don't know, it's sentient code possessing a human. All normal bets are out the window. However, that is not the case at all. As we learned from CD number 11, it doesn't matter what order you find these endgame CDs in, you just need to find 11 of them and you are able to hear this. And we get our first indication that Vanessa is truly Vanny, at least first indication from the tapes. About halfway through this tape, the therapist says that's true. So, on your breaks, it looks like you were shopping for a costume. You purchased some fake fur material. What are you going to make? Then Vanessa mutters indistinctly, you can't really make out what she says. And then the therapist replies with, what was that? Did you say the costume is a secret? Why is that? To which Vanessa replies, I can't talk about this. He said he would always be watching. He could be here or there or anywhere in between. That line of he said he would be watching surely means that she has some idea about what's going on, especially when she's openly talking about how she has plans on making a costume, or at least mutters about it. So if she's aware but doesn't fight it, does that mean that she's accepted Afton as a part of her? Possibly. And it's 7 connections. Now, whether or not she knew about this, Vanessa's recommendation for the night guard position came from the top of Fazbear Entertainment, which does end up confusing plenty of people in the administration, as we learned about from various duffel bags. She has no security experience and she was transferred from another part of the company, but nevertheless she still got the job despite multiple people saying that they wouldn't go forward with hiring her, which honestly, let's be real here, probably led to their deaths. So who on earth is the one ordering her promotions? Seemingly, we have no idea. We could assume that it's William, but he's currently plugged into a charging station in the basement, so it would have to be someone who knew her, knew Afton's interest in her, made her a VR tester so that she could get possessed, and then made her a security guard so Afton could get her to do what he needed. But who could that possibly be? When I have a solid answer, I'll be sure I'll let you know. And at 6, CRT effect. Now, while most of the mystery surrounding the CRT effect we get on our screen when Vanny is around is directed at Gregory currently, like why does he see it like that, the bigger question in my opinion is why does Vanny cause that effect? We see it happen to the security cameras as well that the therapist describes to client 46, because she's only human. Vanny is only a person. There is no real reason for her to cause these sort of effects. Like, yes, she has some form of sentient code possessing her, somehow, but by no means should there be a reason why she is causing the cameras to screw up when she's near them, including Gregory's eyes. It explains why the animatronics can't see her, or why Freddy at least can't see her until he gets Roxy's eyes, but while the camera effect explains things, it still needs to be explained because there is seemingly no way that it should actually be possible. Sentient code possessed or not, because either way, she's human. She bleeds when she falls down, or at least she should, but given that the game is designed for kids to be able to play it, there isn't really any blood, but still, she should only be human, right? Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night. I think we all know where William Afton he deserves to go, okay? One-way trip downstairs, or as Henry said, although for one of you, the darkest pit in hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. I'm still waiting, Afton. And you know what? We thought we had gotten rid of him. We thought that William was in hell for Ultimate Custom Night. However, this proves to not be the case when the Man Room 1280 was released, showing us that instead William had only been in a coma like his son years before. However, this time winning was him waking up instead of dying, only dying when he explodes in the Fazbear warehouse and creates Glitch Trap, but apparently this is no longer what happened. Because did William really possess a hard drive and become sentient code, or is there something more going on here? While yes, weird things in the series can be explained away with it's FNAF, or like a dream theory of something, but like, no, I'm not doing that, okay? That's the coward's way out, and I'm not a coward for the most part. Although I don't want to play horror games. But like, just look. If Afton is in Burn Trap, he shouldn't be able to be Glitch Trap. The Ultimate Custom Night is just Burn Trap being in the pod. It's what he's seeing when he's in the pod. So everything we thought we knew about Ultimate Custom Night doesn't count anymore. And that's hella annoying because, you know what? We thought we had something. We thought that we had finally figured out one thing about this series. Then you know what Scott says? Up yours! And at 4, survivors. It seems like everyone we've seen the true ending to Security Breach, including Burn Trap, are survivors of the FNAF 6 fire, which means that this would indeed be Scrap Trap or Spring Trap, but as to how he changed again, I have no idea. How do we know that this is everyone from FNAF 6 and not just William? Well, the Blob, which is a massive sized proportion of wire tentacles, because of course it is, and animatronic parts with possession of many glowing eyes. It has a whole load of them, okay? It has a mask that is identical to that of Funtime Freddy with black eyes, pinkish red glowing pupils, and like the endo face that reveals to have face plates rather than tubes, which is already a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. The Blob's body is a large mass of wire like tentacles, and like it's basically what the sister location endos were made out of. However, it also appears to be a larger version of Molten Freddy from the Pizza Simulator Fire. Okay, but it's far bigger, and it has parts of other animatronics like Circus Baby, the Puppet, Chica for some reason, Mangle, Bonnie, and several Endo Mark IIs. And you know what? There's probably others, which again is a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Wanted, dead or alive. Forget it. Because, yeah, you know what? This is actually a good question in this case, since I don't know if Afton is alive or dead inside of the Burn Trap suit, okay? He was alive in the Spring Trap and Scrap Trap suits, as we learned from the Man in Room 1280, because he was possessed by the one you should not have killed. But did he finally get put down after FNAF 6, or is he still kicking? Okay, his body is still present within the Burn Trap suit, or at least it partially is. His skull is still there. So, what's the consensus here? I don't know. The existence of Glitch Trap seems to imply that he's dead in the suit, but Ultimate Custom Night suggests that the one you should not have killed is still possessing him, which would be what he sees in the recharge station, which would mean that he's alive, and not because of the recharge station, but because the one you should not have killed would still be possessing him, which they would only do if he was still alive, since if we're being honest, the only reason that Afton was possessed was so that he could suffer, so being possessed after he's dead isn't really gonna do anything for Crying Child, because that Crying Child is definitely the one you should not have killed, not Cassidy. I'm saying it, okay? It's a thing. And the one you should not have killed would not be controlling Burn Trap to take over Freddy and turn things evil. It just goes against what we know about the character. So, I don't know at this point. I feel like he's probably still alive, but like just barely. Although, that means that Glitch Trap shouldn't exist. Penultimately, in at number 2, Finally Dead. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things, okay? After making your way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by pressing 3 buttons outside of 3 monitors to burn Burn Trap. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory and then use the doors to temporarily lock them out, and then other things. When Burn Trap is finally burned, the blob, which was that tentacle monster thing that I was talking about, attacks him to make sure that he doesn't get away. Freddy and Gregory will then be shown escaping and sitting on a hill together. However, if the blob actually does kill William is a totally different question. There are death animations in the game files, however they aren't used in the ending, so we can't count it as canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing should have ended with this game from what we understood about the series, but he came back nonetheless, so even logical conclusions aren't going to help us. And if the blob was going to ensure William's death, it would then have to ensure its own death, so I doubt that it did it. God, just please let William finally be dead for the love of everything in life. Please. And finally, in at number 1, comes back. I think that unfortunately Afton being resurrected or returning in some form or another is inevitable. I don't get why, okay? I think at this point we can move on from this killer. We have a new one, but a load of people seem to think that we need Afton back again. I put a poll up on like the Vanny facts lists that we know during the premiere. And even though the video is about Vanny, only 51% of people thought that she was better than Glitch Trap. And I think that speaks volumes as to who the favorite in this series is. Like, I get that we've grown up with Afton as the killer, okay, but hell, we didn't even know his name until Sister Location. Until that point, we were calling him after a frickin' color, okay? We've known this man's name for like 5 games. That's literally half the series. That's half the time the series has been out. The first 4 games didn't have him, okay? He was just like, he wasn't even a character in the first game. Just a mysterious man the map pack compared to Nathan Dunlap, okay? Just end him, finally, please. Now, based on the points I made last time, there are a few things that we need to go over. Firstly, the breaking and entering does not apply in the actual game, but can come into play later on. He is 100% trespassing though, despite being locked inside. He actively hid inside of Freddy, like in his stomach, instead of leaving the Pizzaplex, which would make this trespassing. Every time I mention stealing, like in the merch, the security badges, even Freddy, there's no arguing that. He does in fact steal those. The main argument against these is that, well, he needs to do this to survive, which is blatantly not true. Okay, Freddy informs Gregory that the doors will reopen at 6 a.m. All Gregory needs to do at that point is just stay in Freddy's green room or the area behind it until 6. Nothing else was necessary in order for him to survive. The only problems occur when Gregory tries to get out sooner. He causes his own problems. Vanny only ends up knowing Gregory is in the Lost and Found because she put him there as Vanessa. So, with that logic in mind, Vanny would not have known that Gregory was in Freddy or Freddy's green room. He says that himself. And Vanessa does not check inside Freddy when you approach her while piloting him. So as far as the argument that he needed to do this to survive, no he didn't. Unless he ends up making the problems himself, which would completely destroy his case. So, glad we got that settled. One of the other points of contention was really everything else he did was in self-defense. He had to destroy the animatronics. He had to kill Vanny in the phaser blast ending, otherwise they would have killed him. But while self-defense does sometimes justify killing in order to protect yourself or your loved ones, this is typically used for human-on-human interactions. Human on robot interactions wouldn't necessarily fall under self-defense. The animatronics would have to be proven that they didn't intend to harm Gregory, and this could be done using code analysis and camera footage. However, we know that the animatronics were hacked, and whoever Client 46 is did the hacking. Now, if Client 46 is Gregory, which in the context of this world, they would know, and the evidence seems to actually point to, the fact that the animatronics were after him could be seen as his fault, since he actually disturbed their original programming. This is also where the footage of him in the Pizzaplex would have come out, particularly the image where he was talking to someone with rabbit ears, thus showing the jury that Gregory and Vanny had a personal relationship, further hurting his case. Gregory by no means had to destroy the animatronics. He chose to do it. Freddy even asks him not to. Gregory didn't do it because he had to, he did it because he wanted revenge. He even says it himself, quote, "They get what they deserve." He was destroying them for revenge and to get the parts for Freddy, not so that they wouldn't hurt him, since after all they can still come and kill him after he destroys them. So he does destroy property because he wanted the animatronics to suffer, not because he had to in order to be safe again. Again, could have just hid in Freddy's room or somewhere else. People are also saying that he's homeless, so he has to steal. Firstly, homeless or not, it's still illegal to steal. And secondly, I don't think that he needs Roxy balloons, action figures, and stuffed characters in order to survive survive another day. I'm not saying that he shouldn't keep himself alive, I'm just saying that what he's doing is illegal, which is true no matter who you are. And anything I included in those numbers was not a story item, and instead the extra items that you do not need in order to beat the game. And you didn't need to steal Freddy at all. There's no justification for him running off with Freddy other than the fact that they're friends. But then again, it's grand larceny and illegal. One commenter decided to try and provide legal defense for Gregory in a lighthearted manner because that was also the point of the video. So I'd like to reply to Jason Ross's defense for the theft of security badges. Quote from his comment: "While this is technically a crime, I think he could make a strong case with any halfways decent lawyer that he did so out of necessity. He stole stuff to help further his attempts to escape unlawful confinement and other crimes committed against him. Stealing those items he stole was necessary to save himself. He would never have survived the night if he didn't steal." First of all, you just outright admitted that it was a crime, which an actual attorney would have torn to shreds. Secondly, like I've been saying, he could have been hiding the entire time, okay? He would have survived if he had just hid until 6. He doesn't escape any sooner than 6 a.m. You progressing throughout the game just makes the time go to 6. He never escapes sooner. He did not have to steal the security badges. Unlawful confinement, as you said, is described as whoever wrongfully restrains a person as to prevent that person to move beyond a certain restricted limit is said to have committed the offense of wrongful confinement. However, nobody restrains Gregory, literally, as well. Like, they don't actually time anything. He gets himself locked in the Pizzaplex. Nobody locked him in there intentionally. The doors close automatically at midnight, and he had plenty of time to leave, but didn't, and he chose to climb inside Freddy, which also ruins your argument against trespassing, which was also wrongful confinement. And for all intents and purposes, in the eyes of the law and any outsiders, Vanessa was actively trying to help him. There are recordings of her claiming to have called the police, which would have been verified certainly, but even if she had called them and claimed something else, the record of her calling 911 would be there. Most of Ross's case relies on unlawful confinement. However, staying in somewhere and then wanting to leave does not constitute unlawful confinement. And to the public, Vanessa was trying to help get him home, but he was avoiding her. We know that she was trying to kill him, but the public doesn't. Now for the biggest issue that everyone seemed to have with this list, the one that I'm sure y'all clicked on this video for. The claim that killing Vanny was murder and not self-defense. And this claim is really the reason I wanted to make this video, because I can't reply to every single comment that was referring to this, okay? Self-defense can be a defense to an assault, battery, and criminal homicide because it always involves the use of force. Most states have special requirements when the defendant uses deadly force in self-defense. Deadly force is defined as any force that could potentially kill. An individual does not have to actually die for the force to be considered deadly. Examples of deadly force are the use of a knife, gun, vehicle, or even bare hands when there is a disparity in size between the two individuals. Or, in this case, the use of animatronic robots to kill Vanny, as Gregory does in the phaser blast ending, which would also set a precedent for robots being counted as deadly force. To successfully claim self-defense, a defendant must prove 4 elements. First, with exceptions, the defendant must prove that he or she was confronted with an unprovoked attack. Second, the defendant must prove that the threat of injury or death was imminent. Third, the defendant must prove that the degree of force used in self-defense was objectively reasonable under the circumstances. And fourth, the defendant must prove that he or she had an objectively reasonable fear that he or she was going to be injured or killed unless he or she used self-defense. The Model Penal Code defines self-defense as justifiable when the actor believes that such force is immediately necessary for the purposes of protecting himself against the use of unlawful force by such other person on the present occasion. Okay, so I'm willing to admit that the attack was certainly unprovoked. Vanny did not need to come after him in order to get him out of the Pizzaplex. However, that second issue, the proof of threat of injury or death was imminent, is where things get complicated. At no point in the game does Vanny directly threaten Gregory with any words. Her voice lines include, "See you soon," "Disassemble Freddy," "There you are you having fun yet?" laughter, and "Let's have some fun." While menacing, none of these involve a direct threat. At no point in the game does she brandish a knife or even send the security bots after Gregory to disassemble him. She only sends the 3 main ones to collect him, who also make no appearance in this ending, therefore do not count. Yes, when she catches us we get a game over screen, but that's just us losing the game. That isn't necessarily us being killed. Us thinking that we get killed is simply an assumption because we don't see what happens next. However, in this case, since we made it to the end, Gregory had never been caught by Vanny. While yes, she does end up destroying an animatronic, it was just an animatronic. that's not really a threat on Gregory. Now, let's skip point number 3 for a minute and then move on to point number 4. That the defendant must prove that he or she had an objectively reasonable fear that he or she was going to be injured or killed unless they used self-defense. While yes, Gregory is a child, or seemingly a child, who would have a more extreme view of the world, he literally spent 6 hours running and hiding from Vanny, where he ended up surviving. In fact, he was right at the Pizzaplex door to leave, but instead of leaving, he chose to go after Vanny, thus turning this act of possible self-defense into a possible act of vigilantism, or even turning Gregory into the aggressor. He and Freddy went to confront Vanny. He says himself maybe that they can catch her in her room at Phaser Blast. Gregory could have left and survived, but chose not to, meaning that he cannot claim self-defense in an altercation that he created. And now for the final point. The defendant must prove that the degree of force used in self-defense was objectively reasonable under the circumstance. Now, being a child, there is a leeway as to what he would deem reasonable force, but in this case, it is absolutely not reasonable force. We see how destroyed Freddy is after he gets disassembled, okay? His chest and torso are gaping open. He had his insides ripped out. And then he even ends up dying in an animatronic sense, even though his body and his head have been shown to work separately. And then Gregory orders the same thing done to Vanny, a human who would be alive as the animatronics ripped her ribs and intestines from her body. Does that sound reasonable to you? Because killing in self-defense is easiest to claim when the death you cause is quick or painless. But Vanny suffered, and suffered hard. Even criminals on death row do not get this treatment. A serial killer with more kills than Vanny would just get the simple 2-dose lethal injection, where the first dose actually is intended to dull the pain of the second dose. Under absolutely no circumstances would Vanny being torn apart so badly that the comic panels won't even show it be considered the proper amount of force. Especially when he could have said anything to stop or break or even kill. He could have just said kill. This is absolutely over the top, especially given that Gregory seems to have known her if he is indeed Client 46, which is also hinted at during the Princess Quest ending, but since that's a different ending, that doesn't really count here. Which, if he was Client 46, that would have appeared in court. So what kind of charges and juvenile time is Gregory facing because of this? Well, if Gregory had Mac Murdock as a lawyer, let's say, or as someone who's also a really good lawyer, they could possibly argue that this would rather be manslaughter than murder. However, Gregory knows what disassemble means, so an argument that this was an accident would be very tough to pull off. But looking at the minimum sentence, there are 3 possible outcomes for how he'd be treated. 1, the child is so young or mentally incompetent to not understand what they've done and are excused for criminal and civil liability from their actions. Not the case for Gregory, who knew full well what was going on the entire time throughout this game. 2, the child is old enough to understand what they have done, but not old enough or lacking in evidence of sufficient premeditation to charge them as an adult, so they are charged and tried as juveniles, which could be the case for Gregory and is the most likely outcome. And then 3, the child is old enough to understand what they have done and there is evidence of planning and premeditation such that they can be deemed to have acted as an adult might, and they are charged as an adult, with the exception that minors may not be sentenced to death. Now, this could be the way that the courts decided to go, since after all, Gregory did intend on confronting Vanny, since he could have left the Pizzaplex but instead went after her. If he is Client 46 as well, the images of him breaking into the Pizzaplex before could be interpreted as premeditation, especially if he was investigating the Pizzaplex because of Vanny. The state could also argue that his intention was always to kill her. So, with these rules in mind, we will look at a minimum and maximum sentence. The minimum would be a manslaughter charge. However, unlike murder, manslaughter does not carry an automatic sentence of life imprisonment. It remains, however, an opinion for the court. But looking at the situation, things wouldn't look too good for Gregory. A 9-year sentence, which is not uncommon, would allow the offender to be paroled after serving 3 years of their sentence. If a firearm is involved in the offense though, a minimum sentence of 4 years is required. And while the weapon was not a firearm, it could be argued that since she was a distance from him, that it could also be considered similar. So at least Gregory would be looking at 3 to 9 years for manslaughter. If he was charged with murder, however, he would absolutely be tried as an adult. And since this is the worst case, we'll go with first-degree murder, since the court could consider this planned and deliberate. Those convicted of first-degree murder all receive the same sentence: life imprisonment with parole eligibility after 25 years. A 20-year-old convicted of first-degree murder will be eligible for parole at the age of 45, and if they behave themselves, then they're likely to receive parole. But considering Gregory's personality and your comments on that top 10 video, I doubt that he'd like admit responsibility, show remorse. He doesn't seem like that kind of person. Although after 25 years, he may start looking at things differently, with new eyes, if you will. This is also if he ends up actually aging because he's a real human and not a robot like we're all thinking. And like if he doesn't age, a whole new investigation is gonna happen. So let's not get into that. Well, the concept of multiple Earths is fairly simple, kind of honestly put. For every moment, there is a world where every outcome exists, although they don't all exist at the same time. Using the common cereal metaphor instead of Schrodinger's cat, in the morning you wake up to sit down for breakfast. You have multiple cereal options in front of you: Apple Jacks, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and Lucky Charms. There is an equal possibility for you to pick either one of them, and those possibilities exist on their own. But only by picking your cereal do you know what universe you end up in. Okay, I guess it's simple if you're obsessed with this kind of stuff like I am. However, what this doesn't explain is that there's a world where you don't eat breakfast. There's also one where you have Eggos instead. Or hell, there's one where you finally eat those damn freezer burnt pancakes that are staring at you for months sitting at the back of your freezer. All of those possibilities exist, and simply put, when you make a decision, you pick which branch of reality you go down, but the others still happen. So applying this to FNAF, we know that there are multiple endings but only a single canon ending, because this is the ending that continues this branch of reality. The branch where we free the spirits of the missing children in FNAF 3 instead of letting them suffer eternally. The one where we go to the scooping room in Sister Location instead of going home and letting Ennard escape on its own. These are the branches that Scott deems as the one our character follows, but all other possibilities still happen. So there is a world that follows the spirits not being released, and the universe where we do save Vanny from Glitchtrap's grasp. It just so happens that these aren't the stories that we follow any further. Okay, but why does this matter? Because if FNAF ever ends up running out of ideas for how to continue this story, they've perfectly set up a way to revitalize the entire series without having to worry about rewriting the established lore. FNAF Security Breach has 7 endings. That is 6 other game possibilities that we have yet to see, that might not be made, but also might be made. Like what happens after the worst ending, when Gregory isn't around to try and fix everything? What happens after the rooftop ending, the van ending, or my personal favorite, the phaser blast ending, since it's the first ending I got, meaning that, to me at least, it's my ending, it's my canon ending. The way my Gregory worked was that he went after Vanny. These can all be explored without impacting the main continuity. Hell, they can even test things that they don't want to put in the main canon of the game. Okay, I shouldn't say that. It would be canon, but it wouldn't be in the main continuity. Like, since like canon and continuity are different. But that's only potential, I can hear you saying. Which, firstly, are you complaining about me telling you how we can possibly get more FNAF games? That's a bit confusing. But also, well, yeah, they're potential games. It's not like they've announced any other games outside of the main FNAF continuity. Right? Wrong. Remember that old gem, the Fazbear Fanverse initiative? Oh yeah, baby, that's right. I thought the joy of creation made this into our world? No, this is just one of the branches, one of the variants for those of you who watch the Loki series on Disney+. While yes, they take place in their own universe and are not a part of the main FNAF continuity, that doesn't mean that they aren't a part of another branch. The question is, which one? Well, technically, each of the FNAF games has 2 endings at least. The one where you survive the 5 nights and the one where you die. But to know what ending we are following with these fanverse games, we must figure out what the hell is going on. Firstly, the first FNAF game is getting a remake called Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. Along with that, some older games of the various series will be remade due to them using assets that were either copyrighted or made by uninvolved people. This has to be done for the other part of the project, releasing these series for sale on console and mobile devices in series bundles. Series involved will also end up producing official merchandise merchandise, like U2's collectibles and plush toys, hopefully Funko Pops. While it is clear that the Fazbear Fanverse games are confirmed to be officially part of the FNAF franchise as a whole, they will remain in their own continuity, okay? So they have like a whole separate timeline, which is why they are getting the FNAF Plus. Although Pop Goes and Five Nights at Candy's are confirmed to take place in the same universe. So Pop Goes and Five Nights at Candy's are in the same universe as each other. So focusing on FNAF and Pop Goes lore, the description for the first FNAF game states that Freddy Fazbear's new pizzeria has closed for good, and so another restaurant is going to take its place in the world of entertainment, meaning that we're either dealing with the same closure that made Circus Babies, which exists outside of the games at the moment, or we're dealing with the 1993 closure after the first game. Considering how the first game is also getting a remake and FNAF was released after the first game before Circus Babies was even a thing, we can guess that it's about the 1993 closure. Pop Goes, however, gives us a little bit more. A year after the fire at Fazbear's Fright, a rich and creative inventor in England, only known as Fritz, has taken the role of continuing the animatronic pizzeria brand with his own restaurant called the Pop Goes Pizzeria. Sporting extremely advanced robotic characters such as Pop Goes the Weasel and Blake the Badger, the place soon became notable for being technologically ahead of its time. So this game takes place 1 year after FNAF 3, which should be taking place in 2023 since it opens 30 years after the FNAF 1 pizzeria closed. And the story summary on Pop Goes' wiki confirms this. Quote, Pop Goes takes place in November 2024. The first night happens on the 25th of November. A few days before the game started, Fritz Glade, who is the creator and owner of the Pop Goes Pizzeria, accidentally murdered his daughter, Bonnie Glade, in a PTSD attack. Now her soul is haunting the Pop Goes Pizzeria, waiting for a body she can possess, the Black Rabbit, end quote. But considering how the fire happens after night 6 in FNAF 3, which you can access after either the good or the bad ending, we can't be sure which branch we are actually in here. Since we managed to make it to FNAF 3, since Pop Goes and FNAF take place in the same universe, at least those two take place in the same universe, others might be confirmed to also take place in that same universe. I feel like all the Fanverse games in this series should be in the same timeline, but hey, I mean, I don't really know how they can work with Joy of Creation. But we have to assume that we beat FNAFs 1 and 2, and considering how Springtrap never makes an appearance in Five Nights at Candy's or Pop Goes, I'm guessing that in that instance, this time Springtrap was actually burned. Thus the story of the main FNAF continuity would be over, which would make sense since it allows for the actual stories of these games to shine without us worrying about the rest of the FNAF story and how it affects these games, how they end up getting to security breach and all that, which I think is probably the best course of action to take. However, I'm definitely looking forward to FNAF Pop figures because I want a Monster Rat Funko in my life. I feel like I need it. Or like the ignited animatronics from the Joy of Creation. That would be dope. I want that. I want all 4 of those. I want ignited Springtrap, because that one was sick from the Halloween edition. And a 10 Nightmare arm. The arm at the end of the initial security breach teaser drove the internet mad for like a week before we ultimately just said we'll wait for the next trailer. And with the most recent, which was the last trailer before the game's release, we still had nothing about that arm. And I guess I can understand why, but it was still frustrating. So you can guess that when someone tagged me on Twitter at Centimeter Monroe and showed me a picture comparing the security breach arm to the arm of Nightmare Freddy, I'd be intrigued. So intrigued, in fact, that I actually got angry because if it's ever intended on being a Nightmare Freddy arm, I'm leaving, okay? Like, these animatronics are perfectly content being illusions, okay? Or in a child's imagination running wild while his body is trying to save his life. But like, still, what the hell? Like, how do these versions of Afton in an animatronic keep changing? They all have his body in it, so they must be intentionally the same endo, but then it keeps changing designs still. And a 9 Stitch Wraith. Seeing the Stitch Wraith was very unlikely, but I would have certainly enjoyed an appearance of the character, even if it was in like a nightmare sequence like I had suggested in other videos, or maybe it was like a brief passerby. I mean, like, it's not impossible, but I do think that that one wasn't likely to happen. Even in a future DLC, I don't think it would happen. But it would certainly be interesting to be looking out a window or something in the Pizzaplex, although there's not really any any windows, but like it would still be interesting to see him out of the corner of our eye. However, we did used to believe that the Afton arm was in fact the Stitch Wraith, and some fans believe that Burntrap will actually turn into the game universe's version of the Stitch Wraith, which wouldn't rely on Phineas Taggart and would probably work better for the story of the games, but I don't know. Based on everything we've seen, I don't think that William will be losing his face anytime soon. But what do you think? Do you think that William, or I guess Burntrap, will end up being the Stitch Wraith of the FNAF game universe, or do you think that we'll never see the Stitch Wraith in the games? Be sure to let me know down below. And at 8, not Afton. Some thoroughly believe that this animatronic, this new version of the Spring Bonnie animatronic, to not be William, and instead possibly be Henry Emily, William's business partner and father of his first victim. Why do they think this? No idea. However, I can kind of see why, but simply it's just due to inconsistencies, since seemingly the endo for this version of Springtrap also has the same endo as the Glamrock animatronics, or the ones that we see in what is honestly the scariest part of the game. Those are the only real endos that we see. Since if this was Afton, the endo should be the first version of the endoskeleton. My explanation for this is simply because they had this model for the endo in the files and they were rushing to release something after already delaying the game multiple times, so they used it and added the Springtrap bits onto it. And since he's so destroyed, it's really difficult to determine whether it's the same design as Scraptrap, and since Henry was also in the FNAF 6 location, it could be him technically, or at least he was around the location, but I still doubt it. And at 7, Bonnie. This is an interesting theory from Reddit user u/was that the bite of 87 on the Game Theorist subreddit a month ago, which actually MatPat just talked about in his last Game Theory on Sunday. The post didn't get much love, but it's certainly interesting. Was that the bite of _87 asks if the Burntrap animatronic is using the disassembled Bonnie. Quote from the Reddit post. So, I have a theory that Burntrap is using the disassembled Bonnie robot. Let me explain. So you know how Burntrap has an intact animatronic foot even though no other Springtrap or Scraptrap never had them? Management might have disassembled Bonnie, and there could have been a body of Glitchtrap infected person in there, which explains the dead rotting corpse, and Afton could have taken over, but is weak, which explains why he needs a recharge station. That is all I have for now. It's kind of rough, but considering how Afton's body is still in that robot, which wouldn't be necessary if his consciousness is only in Glitchtrap or if it was transferred into this endo, I don't think that this is actually like the canon. Like I think that if Afton's body wasn't in the robot, you'd be onto something, and like MatPat would also be onto something because he also agrees that this should be Glamrock Bonnie's endo. But his body being in there has to be Scraptrap, but like heavily burnt. Like sure, he has another arm, but they could have just added an arm onto him. But like the main body of it would have to be Scraptrap, unless we have like a really messed up scenario going on, which is possible, but it's a kid's game, so I don't know. I mean, like, would Vanny take Afton's rotting corpse and put it in a new endo? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think that they just replaced the arms and the legs so that he could stand, because he didn't have his actual human feet anymore. That's just what I think. And at 6, AI. It is unknown how Glitchtrap was able to leave his body for the events of FNAF VR, or how he re-enters it for the events of Security Breach. And based on everything we know about the series, it should be impossible for Glitchtrap to exist if Afton is still inside Burntrap, especially if the one you should not have killed is keeping him alive still, since that would prevent Afton from escaping from his body. And despite a line of dialogue in the trailer clearly coming from some sort of William Afton, Burntrap never speaks throughout his entire encounter, which only makes this more confusing, since if he talked, we would know that he isn't an AI, but he doesn't talk, so we can't be sure if he is or not, since not talking doesn't exactly mean that he's an AI, since people can also choose not to talk. And the AIs in this game also talk, so at this point, we have no idea if he is or isn't an AI, which is really annoying. Although, I still believe that the one you should not have killed is Gregory, not Cassidy, but you know, well, MatPat doesn't want to talk about it. He won't respond to my Twitter, okay? Or my Instagram. Or literally anything at this point. MatPat, please. Let's talk about this. Halfway through into number 5, Client 46. Some people believe Gregory to be the mysterious Client 46, such as myself, able to be found in the retro CDs available at the end of the game, using Roxy's eyes. However, others suggest that perhaps this Client 46 is Vanny, since Vanny is an alternate persona of Vanessa, and Vanessa is her only other client with retro CDs in the game. Client 46 doesn't talk, but is adept at hacking, something we at least before the game came out associated with Vanny. However, I have a few issues with this theory. I don't know if therapists dealing with DID or dissociative identity disorder would classify other personalities as separate clients, since I'm pretty sure sentient code-possessed humans wouldn't really be expected, even in the FNAF world, at least by the people in the FNAF world, so any therapist would most likely classify this as a case of DID. And I'm not sure if they classify other personalities as other clients, or if it's like the same client number but different notes. There's also the fact that Client 46 is seen talking to someone in a bunny costume, or at least the costume itself. However, the cameras are glitching out, indicating that the bunny is Vanny. And also the fact that Vanessa leaves in disc 12, or around disc 12 at least, and 46 doesn't end until disc 16. And at 4, Afton. In the best ending, there are quite a few confusing moments. The most confusing one for me at least is the idea that Gregory would go get ice cream with Vanessa once she's done trying to kill him. Like, why would you do that? Some seem to think that it's because they're related, or representing the dead Afton kids. And thanks to MapPad, there's a little more evidence to this. The ice cream that Vanessa gets while on the hill is very reminiscent of the ice cream cone that gets Elizabeth lured into Baby's arm grabbing or scooping range, or however you want to say it. The cone with the tall soft serve on top kind of looks like the cone with the soft serve on top that Baby presents to Elizabeth in order to lure her closer and then subsequently kill her. Is that evidence or just a coincidence? No idea whatsoever, but it's FNAF, so I'm going with it ain't a coincidence, especially because Crying Child also has ice cream that could be symbolic, so that's a little too many coincidences in my opinion. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Sacrifice. There's a theory that Gregory from this game is intended to be a robotic version of Crying Child, which in all honesty makes sense. However, if this is the case, we can build off this and maybe suggest that the real intention behind this game wasn't to bring William back in any capacity, but rather to make Gregory, his son, more like him by sacrificing Vanessa. Now, for some reason, everything seems to work out for Gregory, right? Despite going about this in what is probably the worst way possible, since staying in Freddy's room again would probably have been the winner's choice, Gregory doesn't end up dying this entire time, and in one ending he even stays so that he can kill Vanny and put an end to the missing children. However, honestly speaking, this just feels all kinds of wrong to me. Like, why did Vanny disassemble Freddy, but then leave the controller on the desk instead of taking it with her when she went to chase Gregory? And why even worry about chasing him yourself when you have f***ing robots that can grab him for you? This all seems like too many coincidences, especially for a FNAF game, which could be why this ending is required for the Princess Quest ending. Symbolic reasons. He can choose to be good or choose to be evil in this moment. And Afton was fine with sacrificing Vanessa. I'm pretty sure about that. Penultimately, in at number 2, 2 Vannies. The rooftop ending is unlocked by exiting the Pizzaplex through the prize counter and then clicking leave. This will prompt Freddy to burn the place to the ground, and the two of you can go escape onto the roof. I don't really know what Freddy's original plan was. I guess maybe you just go down the fire escape. But when Gregory gets to the roof, Vanny is seemingly there waiting for us, somehow. She grabs us, but then Freddy, with his new eyes, sees Vanny and jumps off the roof with her, causing them both to fall. They both seemingly die, and we take off Vanny's mask, revealing Vanessa behind it. We look confused, and then the comic ends. However, before actually ending, another couple panels are shown, with Vanessa standing up on the rooftop looking down at what happened. This is probably one of the most confusing endings in the game, since it shows us that there are apparently 2 Vanessas. And while we seemingly knew about the whole double life thing, we hadn't really exactly seen these 2 characters in the same room, so we thought that they were one and the same. And in the Princess Quest ending, we seemingly save Vanny. The simplest answer to that is that there may not be 2 Vanessas, but could simply be Vanessa's soul looking down on her body. We know that souls are actually things in this universe thanks to FNAF 3's cutscenes where Purple Guy gets spring trapped, and those souls had physical forms that caused him to freak out. So this could just be Vanessa regretting all the things that she did as Vanny, hence the fire, because Remnant supposedly needs fire to burn. And finally, in at number 1, Vanny's ending. In the canon ending to this game, the one where we fight against William Afton in the form of Burn Trap, in that that ending, we don't really see what happens to Vanny. While yes, Burn Trap might have been dealt with, we don't know if this releases Vanny or if she's still under his control. Plus, we don't know just what she was actually doing when all this went down. When there's a canon ending to a game, you expect the main antagonist of the game to be there, right? So like, when Freddy and Gregory are just sitting on that hill, chilling in Cedar Rapids, what comes next for the series? This is a question I genuinely just don't have an answer to, and I don't think I could have one, because there are so many possibilities now that I think it's practically impossible for me to guess. And I think that's the point. Since there's someone taking over from Scott for the next game, I'm sure that Scott wanted to leave them with the ability to go wherever they wanted to next, whether that be with William as the main villain, hence his physical form, God I hope not, Vanny being the villain, hence her not being there in the end, or just the Blob, since, you know, it was introduced and then intended to be revealed in the Final Fantasy Friends book, but then delays made the whole thing inevitable. Yeah, okay, you get it, alright? That's my guess as to why the ending is so obscure, but still, what happened to Vanny? No clue. The main issue I've been having is whether William is dead or alive. And there are a couple different things to consider here. Firstly, he is seemingly in a new endoskeleton, which would indicate that he's dead and Glitch Trap's consciousness is just being transferred into Burn Trap spot via the recharge station. But his head is clearly visible. Like, you can see his skull and his actual human jaw, meaning that he could still be holding on to this world via that head, especially given who we're talking about here. The most stubborn to ever grace our screens. This also can't be innuendo, and just the model that they're using for the others since it was easier and they could release the game faster. This seems to be indicated by the way that Burn Trap walks. If this was a new endoskeleton, why would he be shambling like a zombie? But the claws and repaired sections to the actual endo also seem to indicate that this is also a new endo and possibly even Glamrock Bonnie's. So there's a whole lot of wrong going on here. All the points are intersecting and it's not fun. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me, but I think I might have found a way to make it work. However, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. If this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, it would need to have broader shoulders and actually be shorter. Like, even scaling the Glamrock endo so that they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same and lined up, just they don't match. There are similarities, of course, between the two designs, but there aren't enough similarities where I can call this even really above 50%. There's also the issue of the muscles being woven throughout the body, or maybe those are nerve fibers. If it was just the head, I'd understand, since they could have just pulled the old endo head and put it onto the new body. Since all the parts were intertwined, Afton's head would have come with it. But with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's way too intricate to actually have been placed there. And they would only be there and not dangling if it had been stuck there after being shoved full of machine parts. I don't think that they're taking super glue to glue these fibers back onto a new endoskeleton. If Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of his body bits. It wouldn't. That's not how it works. Which would mean this would have to be Springtrap's endoskeleton, which also explains why it's so run down, why he shambles, and why he hardly has any casing. And Springtrap's design also seems to change from game to game. From FNAF 3 to FNAF 6, he was totally different, so him changing again in Security Breach seems like no big deal in comparison. It's basically normal for him to get a newer and seemingly scarier attempt at his design with a new game, and at least this has an understandable progression from the last game and even from FNAF 3, since it's more run down and not just a bigger head like Scrap Trap. It's like he sold his soul for a bigger head and then the demon kind of made a joke out of it. The most reasonable assumption that I have for what happened though was that he was given the hands of Glamrock Bonnie since it has the claws, and just he wasn't given the entire endoskeleton. But then again, his arms have the bits of muscle and nerve fibers as well, which means that it would have to have been his old one, it would have to have been there from the start, it would have to be the arm of the old endoskeleton, which is a whole other conundrum because Scrap Trap was missing an arm and Springtrap didn't have any casing on his foot, yet here we are. I just think that we have to kind of leave this one up to artistic license and accept that it's meant to be the same endoskeleton, just with a replacement part or two from Glamrock Bonnie instead of like the entire endoskeleton. It makes sense, honestly, and it's really the only reasonable explanation that we have. Unless the colors are wrong on the images that I was looking at and the bits on the hands are just meant to be melted casing, which is possible, but I doubt it. As for if he's wanted dead or alive, I think this version of Afton is actually finally dead. And honestly, I'm happy about that because it means that even if he's still here, we can kill him off for good. This is the most logical conclusion to me because, well, other than him basically being only a head, this guy has had multiple backslides of, oh, I'm dead, just kidding. And this time around, while we instantly predicted that he had indeed survived, I think that Scott is finally flipping the narrative on us. We predicted it, so it's not gonna happen. Afton is no longer connected to his body, as we can clearly see from the formation of Glitch Trap. And Glitch Trap being created would only be possible if Afton died, since the one you should not have killed was dead set on keeping him breathing. But Burn Trap, this guy doesn't even have lungs anymore. So yeah, this version of Afton's body is dead, but his consciousness lives on. Like how there's like the conspiracy that Walt Disney froze his head. Yeah, well, that's kind of what they did with Glitch Trap. And then that programming was probably uploaded into his old host, or I guess vessel, since I've been rewatching Supernatural. Basically, this guy would be impossible if he wasn't just Afton's code loaded onto an endoskeleton. Plus, the eyes are clearly robotic this time around with purple pupils, rather than the previous iterations that had seemingly real eyes, Afton's actual eyes, since it was in suit mode after he got snapped. And opening his head in those like secret FNAF 3 screens revealed that it was actually like his eyes because they were seemingly in the same place. So, all in all, here's the story of Burn Trap as far as I can tell. During the FNAF 6 fire, Afton passes out. Not dead, but still somehow alive thanks to the one you should not have killed, Crying Child. This leads to the events of Ultimate Custom Night that sees Afton stuck in his own mind trying to escape so that his spirit can move on. But Crying Child, represented by a golden bear like the one who crushed his skull, tries to keep him stuck, until eventually he throws everything that he has at him. 50-20 mode. After being so weakened by the fire, William survives this attack on his mind, and Crying Child's spirit is set free, hence the spasming bear at the end of that mode. That's him burning as the fire sets his soul free. William's soul then latches onto the nearest thing that it can find, one of the hard drives in the storage room that the Scrap Trap animatronic was being kept in. One that gets scanned to create the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience as the company tries to rebuild its reputation. Then, not wanting to waste the land that was bought for their company, Fazbear Entertainment begins building a new pizzaplex on top of their old location. Whether this is due to Glitch Trap possessing someone higher up at the company through the game or someone just wanting to save money is up in the air, but the remains of the FNAF 6 simulated pizzeria are buried under the pizzaplex's foundation. That's when Vanessa comes along, our player character from Help Wanted, who reassembles the 16 cassette tapes in an effort to destroy Afton once and for all, but ultimately fails. When our mind is distracted by following Tape Girl's instructions, William locks us in our mind and in the Princess Quest minigame that would later get ported to an arcade cabinet for insurance purposes. And by insurance, I mean like insurance on Vanessa so that she wouldn't easily be able to escape. As Vanny, William then uses the animatronics to dig out his body and put his old endoskeleton in a recharge station so that when he's able to transfer himself back into it, he'll be able to move. After all, at this point, he's not a spirit, but simply coding, which means that in another game, if he is still alive, we'll actually be able to kill him off. He also gives his old suit some upgrades in the form of Glam Rock Bonnie's hands and right foot. Why would he not go with a new, more powerful endo, you ask? Because it's William and his Spring Bonnie suit. It's his body in there. Of course he'd want it back. He's been that way for like at least 40 years at this point. It's all he knows. Then, as Gregory and Freddy jump down into the pit, William can sense it. Either because he's an animatronic, because one or both of them are meant to be his kids, or something else, he activates his body even though it's not fully charged and tries to take over Freddy. He's not fully charged, hence the shambling, which Gregory ends up preventing with fire, which has surely traumatized Afton by now, and considering how he's only code, this time fire would actually finish the job. Eventually, the place actually catches on fire, and Freddy and Gregory escape, but the blob grabs hold of William. Whether it was to save him or seal his fate is unknown, but this almost certainly isn't the end of William Afton's story.